At first, the sudden deaths of Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Reiner at their Los Angeles home in Brentwood were seen as a terrible family tragedy. But as soon as federal agents got involved, that peaceful picture fell apart, revealing a disturbing web of secrets that no one could have imagined. There was something much darker going on beneath the mansion's polished charm. It used to be full of warmth, laughter, and family memories. Agents found a secret door under those worn-out wooden floors. One thing that at first looked like it was just another part of a normal check. Still, what they found in the basement shocked even the most experienced detectives. The Reiner home became much more than just a private residence when classified documents and high-level surveillance devices allegedly linked to powerful political figures were found there. It turned into a safe place to store data that could change how the world sees some relationships. Many things were found, including Rob's personal book, which had sad words like, "Dad is sorry, Nick. Please be careful." These lines made everyone wonder what Rob knew and what he was trying to hide. What was really going on inside that lovely house? Could this tragedy have been much worse than it seemed? Could it have been part of a bigger plan than family problems? Investigators are now following a trail of clues that could shake Hollywood and politics to their core. The Brentwood Mansion, a place that used to be known for its beauty, comfort, and old Hollywood charm, is now at the center of one of Los Angeles's most haunting mysteries. Brentwood is a wealthy, tree-lined neighborhood on the west side of LA that is famous for its quiet streets, ocean breeze, and being home to. You could see the effort, though. By the way, that piece was beautifully written, and I think it got to the heart of the matter. They wanted something to happen that wasn't going to happen, and they knew it on some level. Rob Reiner knew it, as did Nick, Michelle, Romy, Jake, and the other brother. But when you watch clips of them promoting that movie, some of which we played yesterday, they don't seem close. The beautiful home of actor Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Reiner was hidden behind tall hedges and classic iron gates. It was their family sanctuary for over 30 years and radiated both elegance and nostalgia. It was a timeless estate that had quietly witnessed decades of laughter, love, and Hollywood history. Built in the 1930s in a traditional New England style, the house covered nearly 930 square meters and had 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, staff quarters, a shimmering pool, and plenty of green space. Even though the home was very fancy, it had a warm spirit. Family came first, and there was art, creativity, and togetherness in every corner. Rob and Michelle not only owned the mansion, but they also kept it alive by hosting private dinners, deep conversations about art and social issues, and even quiet get-togethers with close friends and important guests. Rob once said that the architecture of the home reflected his biggest dream, which was to have a space filled with love, creativity, and peace. For more than 30 years, the Brentwood Mansion kept the Reiner family together. Romy, Jake, and Trey, their children, would visit every weekend, making the house a lively place where people laughed, told stories, and shared meals. The mornings were filled with the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of chatter, and the warmth of being together. There does seem to be a lot of damage between them. It's almost like he's writing to try to will this into existence. Like this is our happy ending. And the part about using the Hollywood machine, which is a tool that Rob Reiner had used all his life to bring stories, to heal other people, like in Stand By Me, and he tried to use it on his own family. Nick Reiner recently changed everything when he moved back in with his parents after finishing a rehabilitation program. This was a choice that would soon become very important in a very sad way. At first, Nick's return brought a quiet sense of healing to the Reiner home. It felt like a fresh start, with everyone doing their best to welcome him back with love and support. But that fragile peace was broken when Romy Reiner went to visit her parents and saw something that would haunt her forever. Within the home that used to be full of warmth and laughter, Romy found her parents lying motionless. The sight instantly paralyzed her. The people who had built that house with love were now gone in a way that stopped the world. She called 911 and waited, her heart racing as she stood in shock. When emergency crews arrived, they found Rob and Michelle not responding. Their once peaceful home had become a scene of heartbreak and silence. It looked like Rob was found near the living room and Michelle was found in the kitchen next to what looked like the same knife she had used to make the family meal. Both were rushed to the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, where doctors determined that they had both died from severe internal trauma. As the investigation went deeper, the mood around Brentwood got darker. The house, which used to be a safe place for families, now feels haunted and full of secrets. Every sound echoed through the halls, as if the walls were holding on to something that was being said. Talking about Rob, he turned back to the table and said, "It was very hard. The most important thing a parent can do is keep their child safe, and I hadn't done that." He was almost crying. "And now here, I have done that. I kept him safe. He came out alive." The writer adds this in 2025. The words kept going through my head. Yes, Nick had come out alive. It was Rob who hadn't. Oh my God. A shocking turn of events happened just hours later. Nick Reiner was arrested while allegedly trying to leave the area. Witnesses said he looked distant and conflicted, with remorse and fear on his face. Many people thought that his arrest would be the end of this heartbreaking mystery, but the real story was just beginning. That night, federal agents joined the case out of the blue, making it official that it wasn't just a local investigation anymore. This caused a lot of questions. Why was the FBI involved? What could be in that mansion that needed their permission? It turned out that Rob Reiner wasn't just a Hollywood legend. He was also a well-connected person who had worked with many well-known politicians and supported major social causes. Because of these connections, investigators were afraid that the mansion might contain sensitive information or communications that needed federal protection. By the evening of the 16th, the streets of Brentwood felt tense as FBI vehicles pulled up without warning and agents stepped out in silence, setting off alarms, confirming that this tragedy was not like any other. The quiet, affluent neighborhood had become the center of a mystery that was about to get even darker. Nathaniel Cross was known for having strong investigative instincts. He was careful, methodical, and determined to find the truth. As soon as he walked through the mansion gates, he knew this was not a normal family case. The air felt heavy, and his gut told him there was something much deeper going on that involved politics and power. As he moved through the house, his steps echoed across the wooden floors. His eyes searched the floors, the artwork, the furniture, and even the smallest details for anything that didn't belong. Under his direction, FBI agents quickly locked down the whole property and set up surveillance and trace detection equipment to make sure no evidence would get away. The home, which used to be warm, now felt like a frozen stage where secrets were waiting to be revealed. Inside, the silence was almost haunting, and the familiar spaces that used to be for morning laughs and family meals now seemed to carry tension in every shadow. Cross spoke quietly with Sergeant Ramirez, telling him to keep all records, including evidence logs and Nick's activity reports, so that nothing was missed. Everyone in the room could tell that this wasn't just a tragedy. It was something much bigger. Outside, neighbors peered over fences to see what was going on. Their quiet streets were suddenly full of agents and unmarked vehicles. The sound of recording devices and low murmurs from investigators filled the air. Something about this house felt alive, with secrets waiting to come out. This day, a young LAPD officer named Daniel Hayes was helping out. He had only been on the job for 2 years, so he wasn't used to tasks this big. But something told him that something important had been missed. As he walked down a dim hallway near the library, he saw a faint reflection along a wooden wall panel. "Sergeant," he said, his voice tense but steady. Cross walked up to the panel, looked it over, and nodded. Together, they pushed it open, revealing a hidden basement door that was so well hidden that it almost blended into the wall. What they found beyond it would leave them speechless. As they went into the secret basement room, it was dark and cold, and it was clear that the room was meant to be hidden. Flashlights cut through the darkness to reveal rows of locked steel cabinets full of neatly arranged documents, recordings, and coded materials. Daniel stopped in his tracks when he saw the first cabinet. The files were stamped, classified, and had references to powerful political figures that were marked with official seals and internal memos. If this information got out, it could bring down whole institutions. "Agent Cross, look at this." Daniel whispered as he turned the pages of a thick folder containing policy drafts, talks that were not made public, and private communications. Ramirez stooped next to him and looked at the pages, his face hardening. "If this ever gets out," he muttered, "it could throw everything into chaos." But the real shock came when they got to the far corner of the room and saw an old wooden desk with a world map, a typewriter, and stacks of handwritten notes. It looked like Rob had spent long hours there studying, researching, or maybe protecting something. There were boxes nearby with encrypted drives, audio recordings, and strange photos marked with strange symbols. "This place, it's like an archive," Daniel said, feeling a chill go through him. "Do you think Rob kept all of this to protect his family or for something bigger?" Ramirez asked in a serious voice. "You're not seeing the whole picture yet, Daniel. One wrong move here, and the world could spin out of control." Daniel's heart raced as he opened another cabinet and found coded maps, hidden trackers, and complicated symbols that pointed to a network. This was unbelievable, he thought. Rob Reiner wasn't just a director. He was a man keeping secrets that no one was supposed to see. Then, in the dim corner of the basement, he saw something. A worn leather-bound notebook sitting next to an old pen. Carefully, Daniel picked it up. The pages smelled like old paper, and the ink was faded but strong. As he turned the first page, he realized this wasn't a collection of government records or... The Warren notebook wasn't about plots and secrets. It was a father's diary full of Rob's private thoughts, confessions, fears, and messages he never got to say to his children. Each sentence was filled with emotion, love, and quiet despair. For Daniel, it was like touching the soul of a man who had kept too many secrets for too long, a father's heart speaking from beyond time. The first words on the page grabbed Daniel's heart right away. They were addressed to. What came next wasn't just a message. It was a confession full of pain and love. Rob had poured his heart into these pages, writing about his fears as he watched his son lose himself to alcohol and drugs, and how hard it was for him to keep the family together. "Nick, I know you're struggling. I just want you to know I'm always here. No matter how lost you become, I will never leave you." Those words hit Daniel like a wave, and as he read on, his vision blurred. The diary showed that Rob had been up all night worrying. The letters showed Rob praying outside of Nick's room that his son would find his way back. They were full of raw emotion and quiet heartbreak. "I only hope you understand that my love will never change, no matter what mistakes you make." Rob's handwriting shook a little, but every line was warm, showing the kind of love that won't break, even when everything else does. Daniel could almost feel the man's pain. A father watching his child fight demons that he couldn't beat for him. For a man as successful and well-liked as Rob, these pages showed a completely different side of him. Weak, patient, and desperate to keep his son from hurting himself. Rob's words were a mix of hope and pain. "I know you're hurting yourself, but I still believe you can rise again. I can't live your life for you, but I will always be here when you reach out." Daniel's throat tightened. During his work, he had read a lot of reports, but never felt so real and like a real person. Finally, the last page came out, and it had a shockingly personal message that stopped Daniel in his tracks. The writing was shaky and full of doubt, but it was honest. "Nick, you're not really my son. I understand that this truth could make everything different, but I love you very much. I will always love you more than anyone else." Daniel was stunned by the words. There was no sound in the room at all. He could almost feel Rob right there with him, not as a well-known director or a politician, but as a father who had kept a terrible secret out of love for his child. Daniel just stood there shaking because these pages made him feel so much. He finally whispered, but his voice was shaking. No matter what, he loved Nick more than anything else. The thought of the biggest secret hidden in that house made him cry. It wasn't about money or power. It was about love, loss, and the weight of family pain that you can't see. Daniel carefully put the notebook into a bag for evidence, but his hands were still shaking. His voice was soft as he spoke. "We need to keep this safe. It's not just proof. It's what he was all about." Cross gave a serious nod, showing that he understood. They found something even more important in a case that began with sadness and mystery. A dad's love that wouldn't go away, even when everything was over. It got quiet again in the basement. There was only a dim torch beam and the smell of old paper in the air. Daniel didn't move because what he had just read was still weighing on him. There were more things than just personal records kept in that secret room. They had secret messages, classified information about politicians, and projects that were never meant to be seen by the public. Nathaniel Cross, a special agent, led the analysis with great care. He told his team to read each paper line by line. They wanted to know if Rob and Michelle had been threatened, pressured, or manipulated in any way with those files before they died. That's when the police saw something strange. The high-tech security alarm in the house had never been set off. With that much information in the system, it was almost impossible for someone to break in without setting it off. This meant one thing. The person who did this knew the house very well. They were after more than just a family. The secrets that were hidden in those walls were what they were after. Then there was the scary advance. Forensic tests showed that the couple's food and water had small amounts of rare chemicals in them. Chemicals that are so small that only very high-tech lab tools can find them. There was proof that the victims had been poisoned in secret before the final attack. It was done on purpose to make them look like this was just a family tragedy by making sure they couldn't do anything or call for help. Agents found even scarier things. Listening devices were hidden outside the house in trees, flower beds, and garden lights. The person who put them there had been keeping an eye on and writing down the Reiners for weeks or even months. One thing was made clear by the find. There was no chance or reason for this. The plan was well thought out and was meant to silence a man who had too much knowledge and too many contacts. There was a line in Rob's book that stopped everyone in their tracks, in their steps. Some people will not let me live if I tell them everything. Daniel felt terrible when he read that. It wasn't being paranoid. A man who knew what was coming for him wrote it out of fear. As the detectives put together more texts and files, the picture became more clear. Rob was under a lot of pressure to give up or even destroy private information. Messages from him showed that he had met people with a lot of power and influence who made requests that scared him. The FBI started to think that these meetings weren't just random, but were connected to the terrible event that killed Rob and Michelle. The Reiner investigation was one of the most sensitive cases federal agents had ever had to deal with because of the growing web of political ties and covert monitoring. As more and more evidence came in, a scary theory started to take shape. Could there have been strong forces working behind the scenes to shut Rob up or take control of the information he had found? Because of Rob's fame and power, detectives couldn't rule out the idea that he had become a high-risk target. One of the agents, Nathaniel Cross, and his team started making a list of all the links. Who was able to see the secret documents? Who could have a reason? Also, who had the tools to pull off such a planned act? Everything that had data on it was sent for advanced digital recovery and forensic analysis. This included data from phones, computers, and encrypted drives that were found in the basement. Cross brought up an important question. Before the terrible event, did anyone else know about that secret room besides Rob? If so, that person might know how to. Everything, which could be proof that this was a planned operation and not just a family fight that went wrong. At the same time, the Bureau hired behavioral experts to look into Rob's mental state before the events. The secret files that talked about important politicians and private fundraising activities were some of the most closely guarded findings. Investigators were afraid that if these documents got out, they could put Rob and his whole family in risk and even cause problems in places other than Hollywood. It became clear that there was a deeper theory as the scope grew. Rob and Michelle may have died, but not because of a personal issue, but because Rob knew too much. Every new piece of information seemed to point in that direction, making it more likely that this wasn't a family tragedy, but rather a clash between personal life and dangerous influence. Around the same time, another name started to show up a lot in news stories. Hi, Nick Reiner. He was the main suspect just 48 hours after the LAPD took over. The public's attention quickly turned elsewhere, and the media went crazy. Every major news source, from national networks to celebrity tabloids, had rumors and shocking headlines all over their pages about the 33-year-old man who was famous for the film Being Charlie, which was partly based on his own life and addiction. Every detail of his life was picked apart by reporters. Online commentators saw him as either a troubled person caught up in something much bigger or the main suspect in a terrifying crime that had shook Los Angeles to its core. Pictures of Nick Reiner being led through South Los Angeles in handcuffs late at night went viral, making him the center of one of Hollywood's biggest scandals. The news media and the people were both shocked when he was arrested so quickly. Just a few hours after, Nick was arrested after the cops blocked off the Brentwood mansion. But that speed made a lot of people wonder, was he really the one who did it? Or was he a part in a much bigger game? Some people said Nick might have been set up or put under pressure, an easy-to-blame person for the person who really wanted Rob to be quiet. One story even said Nick knew he was adopted and was still dealing with the emotional effects of that, which could be making him angry and troubled inside. Sources said that Nick went to Conan O'Brien's house for a Christmas party the night before the tragedy. People who saw the fight remembered it being very heated between him and his father. Rob allegedly scolded him for acting badly, which caused tension that lasted all day the next day. But some people told a very different story. A lot of Nick's friends and family said he had been quiet, thinking, and working hard to fix his life. Since he finished rehab, he had been going to therapy, keeping his faith strong, and making progress. Reports from his treatment center even showed that he was getting better, which made the idea that he suddenly became violent hard for many people to believe. Because of these different pictures, the FBI had to look at everything again. Could Nick have done it by himself? Or was he just the most obvious person to blame in a case that involved power and secrecy? A lot of people wondered why the LAPD was so focused on him while ignoring obvious problems, like the fact that the security system had been left alone and hadn't gone off during the attack. Nick's public history of drug abuse was used against him to make the case look easy and end it quickly, before people could find out more about the political ties his father was said to have. Nick's life had been hard for a long time, from being addicted as a kid to years of failed recovery to being homeless. Because he was weak, he was easy to control and a great person to blame. As federal and local teams continued to work together, the real architects disappeared into the shadows. With each new finding, the mystery grew. Who wanted to get rid of Rob's secret documents? Who had the desire to get rid of the family's influence? How much of what was in that basement could still make us question everything we think we know? The tragedy in Brentwood turned into more than just a Hollywood mystery. It showed how money, power, and secrets are linked in ways that most people never see. There's a darker truth behind the glitz and fame. A world full of lies, trickery, and stories that will never be told in full. Even now, the FBI is still looking through the house, deciphering the files, and following every lead. Still, there are questions. Was this really a terrible accident that hurt the Reiner family? Or was it the last part of a complex plan that went far beyond their home? What do you think? Was Nick really the bad guy? Or was he just a part in a dangerous game he didn't understand? Tell us what you think. Check out the video below. And don't forget to like, follow, and turn on notifications to make sure you don't miss what happens next as more Hollywood secrets are revealed. We'll see you on the next one.